Suddenly, the Christmas morning, filled with silent serenity for Cassie, a 10-year-old girl, took an unexpected turn. Her usually calm and quiet cats, Salt and Pepper, began to meow fiercely. Usually lazy guardians, they had now turned into miniature police sirens. But that wasn't the worst part. Her parents were out, and footsteps could be heard on the other side of the back patio door where no one should be. With a great leap, the cats positioned themselves in front of the door and began to meow and scratch insistently at it. Why did these usually calm and lazy cats now seem like alert? Guardians? What hidden secret would be revealed this Christmas morning? Cassie's pale face turned reddish from the blast of cold that greeted her like icy needles on the other side of the door. On the doorstep was a white envelope with an immaculate reddish wax seal. The girl opened it. A letter from Santa. In the stable, there is a surprise. That must be her. Gift what was hidden there. But her attention was suddenly diverted by an aggressive hiss from Pepper towards the back of her house, as if he had seen someone there, someone who shouldn't be there. The girl stopped wasting time and ran, even when the cold seemed to stop her. Salt was ahead. Of her, his long white fur making him impervious to the frost. Pepper stayed behind Cassie, hissing aggressively every so often. The falling snow was light, but that didn't stop his sharp vision from noticing something that Cassie wouldn't notice until much later. Something that would change her life forever. The smell of pine and cedar grew stronger as they reached the entrance of the farm's barn, a large reddish construction that stood out against the snow. Cassie, despite her small size, managed to open it just enough for her and her furry friends to enter. Only Pepper remained at the doorway, staring out at the white moor. Something about his behavior was chilling to the girl. Brrr. That was the sound of an animal, but not one they had on the farm. Could this be the gift Santa mentioned in the letter, or something else? Cassie moved inside with determination, determined to find the secret her family was hiding. Salt's fur was slightly raised as he got under some boxes and meowed again, this time more relaxed than a few moments ago. Cassie bent down, and there it was, immediately catching her. A pack of colored markers. But that wouldn't be the only thing there. Pepper began to fluff up his tail and meow towards the inside every so often. It was as if the cat was asking her to hurry. Was Cassie in danger? Who was leaving what? Seemed to be clues. Where or what would they lead her to? The girl soon found a book with an equine on its cover. Equine Care was the name on the cover. Suddenly, Cassie held her breath, feeling her heart going a mile a minute. A sound like a neigh filled the place loudly, along with a strong stomp. There it was, majestic in the back of the barn, with a silver coat and eyes blue as diamonds, a foal, neighing somewhat nervously. In the stall where it stood, there was another letter, but this one didn't have a wax seal. It was just a piece of paper. Honey, this is Silver Rock, a foal we rescued. You'll probably find this note before we get back. If so, return to the house after closing the barn tightly. There are things you don't know, but we will tell you. It's regarding the neighbor. He's not entirely a good person. It's not something that involves you directly, but he is a greedy person. It's related to what Grandpa once told you. Suddenly, Cassie's childish mind ground to a halt. Those thoughts of galloping in the snow as a family with her parents and cats alongside the foal at sunset, smiling like a big happy family, vanished. Cassie left the note where it was. Something, an intuition perhaps, or mere instinct, told her she should leave quickly and wait for her parents before anything else. But as she was about to turn, the horse let out a loud neigh, and Pepper an intense hiss. His tense body pointed like an arrow straight ahead, toward the frozen moor of the farm. When the girl finally caught her breath, she stopped dead. Her pupils contracted. The snow outside was cracking constantly, like footsteps approaching at a speed that didn't paint a good picture at all. Salt ran to the entrance alongside Pepper, joining him in an aggressive meow towards the apparent nothingness. The snow didn't let them see anything but the silhouettes of trees, which could easily be confused with a person if not seen head-on. Was it the neighbor who knew about Silver Rock? Or worse, was he after Cassie? Something told Cassie not to leave, not to even dare cross the threshold of the barn door. She backed into the corner next to the foal. Immediately, she felt her legs turn cold and weak again. She didn't know much about animals. She was just a girl. But that didn't change the fact that she knew how to see when an animal was weak, and that was the case with the foal. Its legs were trembling, its eyes held a constant fear, not of Cassie, not of the cats, but of existence itself, it seemed. What had happened to the foal before arriving at the Robinsons' farm? Cassie took its face. In her blue eyes, almost like the animals, there was a strong determination, unfitting for a girl her age. Whatever was happening, she was going to buy time, at least until her parents arrived. Cassie took a breath and stood up, only to dash at high speed toward the barn door to close it. From the inside, Salt and Pepper stayed by her side, but Salt ran up to the highest part of the structure, where a window let him see the farm. But Cassie was trembling. What she saw before closing the door wasn't the silhouette of a nearby tree. It looked like the silhouette of a person walking straight toward the barn, with a firm, determined stride. Still, she couldn't make out the features of their face. Staying on the floor for a moment to catch her breath, she realized Salt was still staring intently, with his piercing eyes at a spot that seemed to have movement. Someone was outside, and that someone was not one of her parents. Inside the barn, Cassie didn't stop. She had to find the reason why the foal looked weak. Her parents shouldn't take long to arrive. Pepper, in his own way, seemed to be helping with the search for clues, moving from one side to the other, up and down, and then meowing upon finding something that would change the situation entirely, and finally shed some light on all this. A note from a veterinarian and animal protection. The foal's original owner was the neighbor, Mr. Jackson. As her eyes scanned the sheet, they widened in horror. Sweat ran down her forehead, and her breathing hitched, unable to believe what she was reading. The foal, Silver Rock, had been a full-blown rescue. Mr. Jackson denied him food and water if he didn't obey in training. It was known he had always been frustrated with horse racing. Cassie's grandfather had once owned a horse that beat the bloodline Jackson had bred with such fervor. All that resentment, built up for years, had been unleashed on a poor animal that had been forcibly separated from its family by a cruel man. Although that was the most notable part, it wasn't the only thing. Pepper, true to his intrepid behavior, had slipped into her parents' truck that day, and as animal revenge, perhaps. Empathizing with Silver Rock's pain, had scratched the man's leg. It wasn't a deep scratch, but it was enough for the guy to fly into a contained rage and threaten a lawsuit. Cassie set the sheet aside and lay down next to Silver Rock, who put his head on her shoulder, almost like giving her a hug. Without knowing it, Cassie had entered a race against time where she could do nothing but wait for her parents to arrive. But the tranquility didn't last long for the girl. A pair of loud bangs were heard on the barnwood, echoing throughout the space. For a moment they ceased, but then they returned with greater intensity. Cassie covered her ears, hoping to soon hear her father's voice scolding her for closing the door, but the growling and hissing of the cats told her otherwise. Would Cassie's parents arrive in time? No matter how much Cassie covered her ears, she could still hear the insistent pounding of the man behind the barn door. The cats continued to meow fiercely in a vague attempt to drive him away from the barn. But that wasn't what surprised Cassie the most. Silverrock seemed legitimately frightened. His glassy eyes watched the door in terror, his ears perking up at every terrible blow, almost as if he wanted to tear the barn door down. But you see, this wasn't going to stop just by keeping quiet. Cassie had to do something. The girl summoned her courage, even though she felt her heart would burst out of her chest at any moment from the anxiety she felt. But it wasn't just anxiety anymore. It was determination. It was the bravery to defend a helpless being he had hurt. With the strongest voice she could muster, she shouted. Cassie shouted aloud, resounding, "No!" which stopped the man's insistent pounding, at least for now. At least it seemed so. But suddenly there was a different kind of blow, and metal shone in the light filtering through the window and the barn's own lights. What was that metal? Had the man not come empty-handed? "I'll take him. He's mine." Mine. How could a human being talk about an animal as if it were a simple object? More than danger, Cassie felt her stomach turn with disgust at those words. The determination in her eyes burned. She was not going to let that man lay a single finger on the foal. Another equally strident blow, and the cold crept into the barn like a blizzard. The warmth the place retained disappeared in an instant, and the cold winter light replaced it, though the man's silhouette was cast on the floor as a shadow that, ironically, stretched all the way to Silverrock. Cassie would have been lying if she didn't admit she felt at least a little fear about the situation. She raised her head and saw him, Mr. Jackson, with a farm tool in his hand. He had broken the wood enough to open the doors and make his way into the barn. "Sorry, Brat. That's my horse. I'm here for him. I need him to win the money your grandfather took." "From me?" Mr. Jackson advanced with a firm step, without even turning to look at Cassie. He didn't even seem to wonder if what he was doing was right or wrong. It was just pure selfishness, guiding him. Cassie stood up and got in front of him, facing him down. "I won't let you take another step." This time, her voice didn't tremble at all. Mr. Jackson narrowed his eyes threateningly and moved her with his right hand. "Aside, Brat," he said as he pushed her out of the way. But her faithful companions were not going to tolerate that move. In an instant, Salt was biting. The man's leg and Pepper had leaped directly onto his arm, the one he used to push Cassie. Aside. Jackson immediately let out a gasp of pain from the cat's bites, but that didn't stop him. He grabbed Pepper by the scruff of the neck and dropped him into Cassie's arms, who immediately caught him. If she hadn't, he would have fallen. Salt was more intense. He was the more stubborn of the two, as always. "All right, Fleabag." Even with the cat biting his leg, he approached Silverrock, grabbing him by the rein he still had. "You escaped for a moment, but it's not going to happen again. You're going to give me back everything I've invested in you, stupid horse." Silverrock neighed and reared up on his hind legs. He didn't want to be taken, not again with him. Cassie could see his eyes filling with tears, but Jackson showed not the slightest expression on his face, almost as if Salt's teeth weren't even there in his leg. "Come on." Jackson pulled hard on the rein again, drawing the foal closer to him. Cassie gritted, her teeth making them grind. She dropped Pepper to the floor and grabbed Jackson's hand. "Silverrock stays. You neglected him." Even though she was a girl, her tone of voice showed no hesitation. It almost didn't seem like just a few seconds ago she had been trembling from the cold. "He's my horse," Jackson shouted in her face, yanking hard on the rein, which in an instant caused Silverrock to lose his balance, falling to the barn floor and letting out what sounded like a cry of pain. "He's Cassie's horse. He's family now," Another male voice echoed from the barn door. A voice Cassie knew very well. It was her father, who was not going to allow another act of disrespect on his property toward his family. But would that be enough to stop Mr. Jackson, or would something worse happen? Salt finally stopped biting Mr. Jackson's leg. Cassie's father approached Jackson and ordered him to get off his property immediately. As if by magic words, Mr. Jackson let go of Silver Rock's reins, but his gaze held nothing but emptiness, the look of someone with nothing left to lose. Just as he arrived, he left. "Close it on. Your way out, please." Jackson, almost a different person than the one Cassie saw minutes before, obeyed. He closed the barn door, leaving father and daughter inside with the foal and the scared cats. Silver Rock was still neighing as they took his reins again to return him to his stall. Salt and Pepper seemed to be having a moment of peace after the storm. But suddenly that sound returned, those constant meows. What did they mean this time? Did Mr. Jackson have something else up his sleeve? An earthy smell filled Cassie's and her father's nostrils, then a crackling. But it wasn't the crackling of a branch. It was something worse, the crackling of fire in a bonfire. But this was no bonfire. The cold was replaced with heat, and smoke rose from the front of the barn. Would the fire consume everything, along with the evidence that incriminated Mr. Jackson? Or would a desperate intervention manage to save the family? Soon, from the crackling smoke, the first flickers of flames emerged, spreading quickly thanks to the hay stored everywhere in the barn, from floor to ceiling. Cassie's father took her hand. Going straight into the flames to get through the entrance would be dangerous foolishness. There had to be another way, some other alternative that could get them out of the flames. The cat's meows had ceased, as if they had given up. But the one who hadn't given up was Silver Rock. He was still just a foal, little more than a year old, but he wasn't going to allow the only people who had given him love to get hurt because of him. In his eyes, there were no more tears. Now there was the purest, hardest determination. He began to walk backward toward his temporary stall, and he did it. He kicked again, and then another. Hope had been renewed among those present. Even the kitties meowed, almost encouraging him to keep kicking, until finally the wooden planks behind his hooves gave way to his kicks. The first to run through that small opening were Salt and Pepper. But they didn't run far. They stayed on the other side, waiting for everyone to get out. They all went in one piece, and they were all going to get out in one piece. Cassie's father grabbed the rake he used to pile the hay and began to hit the opening with it, making it bigger. Silver Rock had to get through there too. Cassie grabbed one of the spare handles for the farm tools, imitating her father. The heat was becoming unbearable. She never would have expected that in the middle of a snowy December she would be sweating like she was right then. The air was becoming difficult to breathe, but that didn't stop them from achieving their goal, with the help of Silver Rock himself. Finally, the three of them crossed through the opening, escaping the inferno of flames. But would this situation stay like this? Would there be justice, or would Mr. Jackson get away, unpunished for all the harm he had caused, not only to the horse, but to the entire family? Cassie came out coughing. Silver Rock came out snorting, probably to clear some of the soot that had collected in his nose. His silver coat was now ashen gray. Although that wasn't the only noteworthy thing in the scene. Like lightning striking the ground in a storm, the sound of cascading water snapped the family out of their trance. There they were, the other heroes of the day. A fire truck was parked, its hose working at full capacity to put out the flames of the fire that, for a moment, threatened to burn the barn to the ground. But what was truly satisfying for Cassie and her father was seeing Mr. Jackson with his hands behind his back, his face against the window glass of a police car. "That horse is mine! That! He's the one who stole it from me!" His shouts pointed to Cassie's father, who didn't even bother to look at him, although the satisfying things didn't stop there. Cassie's mother was the one who had called the police when she couldn't find Cassie. But when she saw Mr. Jackson approaching with a bottle of cheap vodka and nothing left to lose, she decided to call the firefighters too, who arrived just in time. "We found this besides," said the officer. In his hand was a note of an economic nature. Mr. Jackson had decided to auction the horse without even having it in his possession anymore. His plan was clearer than water. He was going to steal Silver Rock. "But why would he auction him?" Cassie asked, still unable to believe that people existed who saw animals as mere objects, or worse, a simple monetary asset to exploit and sell as if it were nothing. On his cell phone, we found several poker debts, plus on his property there were only empty feed bags. The animal probably hasn't eaten well these past few weeks. The policeman spoke, Salt fluffed up again like an enraged furball. Did Salt understand the situation more than he could express? The furball shot past like lightning to bite Mr. Jackson's calf again. It was the purest, finest animal karma for his evil deeds, the least a person like him deserved. With a sigh of satisfaction, she watched as the police forced Mr. Jackson into the patrol car. She finally felt a weight lifted from her shoulders, along with the accumulated tension of the day from going back and forth so much and defending her horse from the mistreatment of its former owner. Soon the sunlight began to turn golden. A few questions here and a few more there, and Cassie was back in her living room. The day had been more than she could have ever expected, not only because she had a new, furry, four-legged friend, but because she had proven to herself that she was not a weak girl at all. Not only that, but she had confirmed that her furry friends were more than loyal to her. Cassie had never expected that a simple, pristine morning would lead her through a test of resilience, determination, and bravery right in her own home, which had seemed so alien to her. The lesson had been learned, and not just the lesson, the living proof of the great intuition her kitties had, warning her of danger and guiding her through it even if their own lives were at risk. Even Silver Rock showed his determination by putting fear aside to save them, and that she would never forget. Their small, brave family was complete now.